Shooter Breeze topic number one says, in America, you can create it, but if you don't own it, it doesn't count. Show business are two separate words pushed together. This came with a link. By the way, you can have your topics discussed. Just join the Discord. Link is pinned to the top of the chat or down in the description. And you too can hear us discuss your topics. And by the way, you're welcome to join us when these conversations are being had. So this is Shooter Breeze topic number one. You guys can see my screen. Yep. So I'll play the video. It's a short. I might play it more than once, and then you'll discuss it.
My name is Eric Monte. I created Jordan Louise Jefferson. Everybody stood up and applauded. I created Good Times. Everybody stood up and applauded. I created What's Happening. Everybody stood up and applauded. I created The Cosby Show. Everybody stood up and applauded. Wrote the movie Cooley High. Everybody jumped up and cheered. I said, and all those white producers for all those shows, they're living in Beverly Hills, and I'm living in a homeless shelter on the east side. And everybody got quiet.
Eric Monte says he helped create Black TV history, but Hollywood still left him forgotten until one man walked up on him.
Everybody got quiet. And this one guy came over to me and he said, my name is Jamar Franklin. Any way I can help you, I will. This guy named John Mitchell was doing a story on him. And he said, do you mind if I tell John Mitchell about you? Because I know he want to do a story on you. And I said, yeah, you can tell him, but the LA Times ain't going to run it. So he said, I'll get it in the paper, no doubt about it. So he did the article and he got it put in the paper. There have been several people that have called me. They want to do my life story. There's people that want to do scripts I've written because I have 30 scripts on my computer. And everybody talks about Cooley High is the best black movie ever made.
You guys think it's so funny because I want to be something besides a factory worker or a football player. Well, that's because you're a bunch of stupid that don't know.
And Cooley High may be the best, but it ain't my best. My best is on my computer. My name is Eric Monte. I created Jordan Louise Jefferson. Everybody stood up and applauded. I created Good Times. Everybody stood up and applauded. I created What's Happening. Everybody stood up and applauded. I created The Cosby Show. Everybody stood up and applauded. Wrote the movie Cooley High. Everybody jumped up and cheered. I said, and all those white producers for all those shows, they're living in Beverly Hills, and I'm living in a homeless shelter on the east side. And everybody got quiet.
Eric Monte says he helped create Black TV history, but Hollywood still left him forgotten until one man walked up on him.
And everybody got quiet. And this one guy came over to me and he said, my name is Jamar Franklin. Any way I can help you, I will. This guy named John Mitchell was doing a story on him. And he said, do you mind if I tell John Mitchell about you? Because I know he want to do a story on you. And I said, yeah, you can tell him, but the LA Times ain't going to run it. So he said, I'll get it in the paper, no doubt about it. So he did the article and he got it put in the paper. There have been several people that have called me. They want to do my life story. There's people that want to do scripts I've written because I have 30 scripts on my computer. And everybody talks about Cooley High is the best black movie ever made.
You guys think it's so funny because I want to be something besides a factory worker or a football player. Well, that's because you're a bunch of stupid that don't know.
And Cooley High may be the best, but it ain't my best. My best is on my computer. My name.
Sorry about that. Let me introduce my first panelist tonight, my first and only panelist tonight. I'll be Black Steel. Black Steel, how are you this week?
I'm doing great, man. How about yourself?
I'm hanging in there, man. I'm doing good. Thanks for coming through, as always. Eric Monte. By the way, he's still alive. He's about 85 or something now. He's still alive. And, it's interesting. And this is why I'll just start off with a little rant. It's interesting that we got these guys out here like Tyler Perry and them, and I'm not shitting on Tyler Perry, even though I'm not a fan of a lot of his work. I'm not a fan, particularly Medea stuff. I'm not a fan of, but I've heard from other people. In fact, recently I heard from someone who was telling me that Tyler Perry was handing off money to grassroots organizations down in Georgia. So kudos to Tyler. Kudos. I just wish, if that's true, I just wish his film stuff was much more aligned with that, but I get it. But it'll be nice if these guys would go and get a Eric Monti and negotiate something with Eric Monti for these 30 scripts he has on his laptop. Eric Monti is in it's like in an old folks home or something now. Destitute. All these big, so-called big black actors and producers that they push out in front of us all the time. Why aren't they making the call? One can say, well, maybe they don't know. It's hard for me to think that they don't know. You're in show business. I'm sure some back and forth talk has occurred. It's not like the NBA where if you're a player today, you might not know a guy who played in the 60s. You know what I mean? You might not be familiar with his game, like Shaq said of Lenny Wilkins. But also, it's troubling that the community doesn't get involved. And I've got a real issue with that. Now that I've seen this and I know, I'd like to find a way to get involved or contact Mr. Monti or something. And in fact, I'm going to try and do that. Just to pass him a couple of dollars to put in his pocket. But the guys who can actually enrich him, put out some of his work, like he said, Cooley High might be one of the best black movies ever written, but it's not his best. So I would like to see what is his best with a nice budget behind it and people, hurrahing behind it. It's just a shame that this is always the case with us. And we are not waking up to it. Hopefully we could shine some more light on this type of thing. Black Steel, did you get to see this video that I played?
Yes, I did. One thing I will say too, when I was, while it was playing, I was looking up some information about the brother. He was on drugs bad. So it wasn't. I think that's part of it. Is that first of all, black people tend not to control their intellectual property, and that means I'm talking about their music. How many black musicians have signed deals that left them with nothing? For example, I always think about TLC. TLC had that song "No Scrubs," and they were singing about how they didn't want some dude who was broke, and they were broke their damn self. When they made that song because of the deal they made. NWA, all those other artists and whatnot who signed these deals would make music, and these deals left them pretty much with nothing. All their publishing and everything went back into the hands of the record labels. So this is a very common thing. But I also think that if this man had an addiction to crack cocaine, which apparently it says he was on crack, I think that also could explain why he was, homeless and living in a shelter, because he could have very well squandered a large part of his money on drugs. And I'm not saying that was definitely the case, but from my understanding, that's what it's saying when I looked information online, that he had that issue. But that's another thing we could talk about. Why are so many of our greats, of our artists and our, things like that, becoming addicted to substances? But yeah, like you said, we don't really have a support mechanism for our elders, really, when they do great things. And this is, remember that Dr. Ben, Dr. Chancellor Williams, John Henry Clark were all very poor and struggling in their older ages. And, we had to find something. We found out later after the fact what people were experiencing, and there was support. But yeah, there's not a lot of, you got to control your intellectual property. And because so many of us don't, like he was saying, these white people get a hold of your stuff. They'll put your name on it, but they'll write the contracts, and they'll get all your money. And I forgot who said it, but they said the white man is as dangerous at the negotiating table that he is on the battlefield. You can't ever, and that's how they look at negotiations, right? It's warfare by another means, a way of accessing your material wealth and the things that you work for, and yet they're getting the money for it. So it's a sad situation all around. I hope he's doing well. I hope I hope his situation has improved as compared to what he was going through before, because that was crazy to work all your life and produce these great movies and sitcoms, and you're not seeing anything from the residuals of it. He wrote, I'm assuming he came up with the concept of it, but then he wasn't able to capitalize on that success because they probably wrote the contracts, or he was supposed to get residuals. I don't know what was written, but a lot of times our people go in there without the knowledge, without the lawyers, or if we do have a lawyer, he's not one of us, and you're getting scammed. I remember, what was it? Eazy-E was getting scammed out of his money, and then one of his girlfriend looked over and she was like, "You losing all this money. This dude owe you such amount of money," and he never had a lawyer or anybody look over the contract. So we got to remember that business is business. You can't come up with a great idea, but then people will take advantage of you and not give you the support you need or give you even your recognition. This is something that Cooley High was. That movie came out in the 70s. He said he has more information on his computer. I hope he gets the support he needs.
Yeah, well said, Blackson. And I agree with everything you said. There's the substance abuse issues that a lot of our people, especially back in the day, 60s and 70s, a lot of our people, even the 80s, as a matter of fact, a lot of our people had those issues and stuff like that. But one of the things I think is problematic is we have, as a group, I think we have a bad tendency, we have a bad outlook on some things. I remember before you started being a regular on Shoot the Breeze, I forgot what the topic was, but I think it had to do with like Dr. Ben and them. And, like you mentioned, Dr. Ben, Chancellor Williams, I'm missing someone right now.
Dr. Clark.
Dr. Clark. I think Tariq Nasheed capitalized and helped to bury Dr. Clark. I think the NBA player David West, or one of them, helped to bury another person. What I'm getting at is, there was a prompt one time, and I asked the audience at the time, do you think that our activists, our intellectuals should be dying in poverty? And I got to be honest, most people didn't see it as a big deal. I think that's a problematic outlook.
It is. And to think about it too, they're not really at an institution of higher learning. Usually once you have your doctorate, you're working at a school, you're publishing papers on a regular basis, just due to the nature of their work, right? They're not going to be accepted at a major university where they can get things like a pension and healthcare and things like that, just because of their interest and their desire to study African people.
Well said, because these guys like Dr. Clark and them. Dr. Clark was here in New York in the CUNY system. Dr. Clark was like an adjunct. He never was like a professor or full professor or anything like that. So it's like where was he gonna get health insurance and health care later on in life? And he had to keep doing speaking engagements. I remember Razuli was here. I remember we had him come when I was in college for Black History Month and speak. He was blind. We are not taking care of our folks, and we kind of don't put a priority on it. And my last thought is, in a world in 2026, in this world where content is king, right? Where content is so huge. If a guy who's proven, with a proven track record, can tell you, listen, I've got better on my laptop. And please, I hope he has his laptop protected, because he's up there in age. I hope no one has already stolen some shit and giving it to us like severance or some shit and said, "Hey, this is my shit," when it really was his. I just hope he's protected in that way, and I think we gotta ride for our freedom fighters a little bit more. We gotta ride for our intellectuals a little bit more. We gotta ride for folks who had the opportunity, maybe squandered it because they got involved in different things, but we still gotta look out for them. We can't just throw them away in the waste bin of history. Shout out to Daily Affirmations by Pauline. Thank you for coming through. Trigger says, yeah, our esteemed should be protected because they are a library too, and they help pass down very important knowledge and outlooks that are invaluable. Kofi, the Black Critic, is in the chat. He says, happy Juneteenth, family. Well, absolutely. Happy Juneteenth to all of us. All of us whose ancestors went through the Ma'afa. Black City, do you have any last thoughts on this, bro?
Nah, man. Like you said, we have to get a better consciousness about protecting our people, because if we don't, man, what are we going to have? People with no history, people with no foundation, and these people who are scholars, and even Mr. Monty, he created some of the greatest Black TV shows that we all look back on to this day. I wish him the best.
Yeah, one last thing for me. Thank you for that, Black Suit. One last thing for me, which is wild. A couple of years ago, maybe just out of the pandemic, I remember Dave Chappelle did a special. And in that special, he talked about how when he was 19 or something, he signed a deal with Comedy Central to do the Chappelle show. And that he didn't know better at the time. He signed a bad deal. And at the time when he was talking about this might be 2021, 2022, somewhere around there. He said something like, they're now selling Chappelle show to, I think it was Netflix or something. He was like, if you really love the Chappelle show, don't watch it on Netflix. And I guess by him saying that and people probably not even watching it, he was able to get a better deal retroactively. And I saw David Alan Gray talk about that. David Alan Gray said, you know how many people signed those bad deals? This goes back to what Black Steel was talking about as it pertains to Mr. Monty and others. He's like, how many people signed those bad deals and never got nothing back out of them? But Dave Chappelle was able to do it. And my thing is, and I'm not pocket watching, I'm not putting the responsibility on a Dave Chappelle per se. But when you guys have been blessed like that, and you come across this information out there, I find it's egregious that you're not doing something. And I ain't talking about something quietly. It's egregious that you're not trying to get better deals retroactively for people like Mr. Monty and others. And I think that's something we really need to work on. We tend to disregard the esteem, as Trigger can put it. But with that said, Anthony in the chat says happy Juneteenth, everybody. You guys who are in the chat, drop a happy Juneteenth for everyone who's watching and will be watching in the near future, maybe in the playback. In the meantime, I'm going to move to Shoot the Breeze topic number 2. I found this one a little bit interesting.